My name is Ava, and I'm 22 years old. You might be wondering how a girl my age ends up living with her uncle, especially with what I'm about to share. Honestly, I never thought this would happen either. I'm studying graphic design, and I spend most of my time drawing, designing, and doing freelance work. Life has been difficult since my parents divorced when I was younger. I moved around a lot, trying to find a sense of stability. Eventually, I ended up staying with my Uncle Nathan. It wasn't planned at all. It all started when my mum had to go away for work and I needed a place to stay while finishing college. Nathan was the only family member who could help. He's been married to his wife, Victoria, for a few years now, and they live in a beautiful house in the countryside, far from the city. I thought it would just be a temporary move to a quiet place, but things didn't turn out as I expected. A few months later, I had settled into the house, the routine, and the peacefulness. Or so I thought. But today, something happened that I need to share. It began when I walked into Nathan's room while he was asleep. Let me tell you a bit about Nathan. He's not like most uncles. To me, he's always been more of a mentor than a family member. Growing up, he taught me how to ride a bike, fix things around the house, and even bought me my first car when I turned 18. So when my mom needed someone to take me in, Nathan was the obvious choice. He's thoughtful, patient, and kind. But it wasn't just him I was moving in with. His wife, Victoria, had been in the picture for a while. They married 2 years ago, and at first, I wasn't sure about her. She's older than Nathan, and something about her made me feel like an outsider in their home. Initially, I stayed in the guest room at the far end of the house, trying not to intrude. Over time, things became less awkward, and Victoria started giving me advice on cooking, cleaning, and household matters. We weren't best friends, but it wasn't as tense as before. I thought things were improving, but recently I've noticed something I can't explain. The more time I spent with Nathan, the more I felt drawn to him. His smiles, the occasional touch of his hand, and the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention all felt different. I couldn't ignore it. There was a tension between us, an energy that felt impossible to avoid. I know what you're thinking. Ava, what are you talking about? He's your uncle. It sounds crazy, I know, but this connection is undeniable. I tried to push it away, telling myself it was just in my head. But every time we were alone, the atmosphere felt charged, like something was pulling us together. Here's where things get interesting. One evening, after dinner, I was working on a project in my room when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Nathan had been napping for hours, and Victoria was out with friends. We were alone. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I heard the door to his bedroom creak open. I froze for a second, unsure whether to leave him to rest or go inside, but something pulled me toward him. Quietly, I opened the door, trying not to disturb him. He was lying on his back, one arm behind his head, looking peaceful as he slept. The light from the window cast soft shadows over his face, making him look almost untouchable. I stood there for a moment, my heart racing. I could feel my face flush and my pulse quickened. I'd never felt this way before. Maybe I just wanted to look at him, or maybe it was something more. I didn't know. My thoughts were interrupted when I accidentally knocked over a vase near his bed. The sound made Nathan stir, and his eyes opened. For a brief moment, we locked gazes. There was confusion in his eyes, but also something else, something I couldn't quite name. He blinked a few times, trying to focus on me, then let out a groggy laugh. "Ava, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice thick with sleep. My heart raced as I struggled to find the right words. I didn't want to look like I was snooping, but I didn't know how to explain myself. My mouth went dry. "I didn't mean to wake you," I stammered, feeling embarrassed. Nathan sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. He smiled at me, the same kind, patient smile he always gave. But today, there was something different in his eyes, something that made my heart race. He studied me for a moment before speaking again. "It's okay," he said gently. "You know you can always talk to me, Ava. I'm here for you." I nodded, but my mind was spinning. I didn't know how to deal with this strange feeling. The room felt heavy, and I could feel my breath coming faster. "I just wanted to talk," I whispered. Nathan's smile faded just a little, and I thought I saw a brief hesitation in his eyes before it vanished. He patted the bed next to him. "Come here, then. You can always talk to me," he said warmly. I stood there for a moment, unsure, but something inside me pushed me forward. Without thinking, I sat next to him. The tension between us was thick, heavier than ever. I could feel the heat of his body next to mine, his cologne filling the air. We were so close that I could hear his breathing and feel the rise and fall of his chest with each breath. My heart raced again, and slowly, almost in slow motion, I looked up at him. Our faces were so close that I could feel his warmth. His gaze was soft, unsure, but there was something else, a spark that made my skin tingle. "Ava, are you okay?" Nathan asked gently. Before I could answer, I leaned in closer to him. My pulse was racing and my breath caught in my chest. I couldn't explain it, but everything felt so intense, as though the air itself was charged. Nathan didn't pull away. His eyes held mine with quiet intensity. He didn't speak, but his breath quickened, mirroring mine. The room felt warmer, and the silence between us deepened with unspoken words. My mind was a whirlwind. Everything had led to this moment. I couldn't stop myself. Slowly I leaned in, my lips trembling as they brushed against his. At first it was uncertain, tentative, but then, as his lips met mine, soft and gentle, I couldn't stop myself. My mind screamed for me to stop, but my body refused. I needed this. I wanted this. Nathan's hand cupped my cheek, urging me closer. His other hand rested beside us, grazing my skin. I could feel the heat of his touch. The kiss deepened, and soon it was hard to tell where his lips ended and mine began. The rest of the world disappeared. It was just the two of us, caught in this undeniable connection. My mind raced with confusion and guilt, but also with a strange sense of rightness. What were we doing? Why did it feel so necessary? There were no words to explain it, no logic behind it. He pulled away for just a moment, his forehead resting against mine. Our breathing was heavy, each breath shaky and slow. I could feel his pulse against my skin, matching the rapid beat of my own heart. "Ava." His voice was soft, strained with something deeper. "We shouldn't." But I wasn't sure I agreed. Something inside me refused to acknowledge any reason to stop. Slowly, I reached for his hand, intertwining my fingers with his. He didn't pull away. His fingers curled around mine, holding on to me just as tightly as I was holding on to him. Our eyes met, and for a long moment we didn't speak. The weight of everything hung between us. Should we? Could we? My hand instinctively moved to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. I kissed him again. This time there was no hesitation, no fear, just the overwhelming need to stay close to him, to feel his presence. Nathan's hand slid down my back, drawing me closer. The contact of our bodies made everything feel incredibly intense. I didn't know where this was heading, but I didn't care. I wanted to stay in this moment where only the two of us existed. My heart pounded in my chest as his lips moved to my neck, pressing soft kisses against my skin. I could feel his breath against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. It was unlike anything I had ever felt before, intimate, consuming, and deeply wrong, yet thrilling in a way I couldn't explain. "Are you sure about this?" he murmured against my skin, his voice thick with desire. "I don't want to hurt you." I shut my eyes, trying to find my words. Everything inside me screamed for me to stop, to pull away, but I couldn't. The desire was overwhelming, the need too strong. I didn't want to think anymore, didn't want to question anything. I just wanted to be with him. "I'm sure," I whispered, my hands trailing across his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingers. "I want this, Nathan. I want you." His lips found mine again, and this time the kiss was deeper, more urgent. There was no turning back. The world outside the room seemed to vanish, leaving only the way he made me feel, desired, needed, and alive in a way I'd never known. The room seemed to close in on us, the light dimming as our connection intensified. Every touch, every kiss felt like a promise. Something more, something neither of us fully understood but were both eager to explore. I could feel his heartbeat steady against mine, syncing with my own. Despite part of me still fighting the reality of the situation, a larger part of me surrendered completely. It wasn't just kissing anymore. It was more than that. A connection I couldn't explain. A bond that went beyond words. "I've wanted this for so long," Nathan whispered, his breath warm on my lips. I barely registered his words as my hands explored him, feeling the muscles beneath his skin, the heat of him, and how he responded to my touch. There was no turning back. The pull between us had drawn us closer than we ever expected. Time seemed to freeze as we lost ourselves in each other, in the rhythm of our kisses, in the warmth of our closeness. For the first time, everything felt right. In the stillness of the room, we were no longer just uncle and niece. We were two people bound by something deeper, something more intense than anything I had ever known. The air between Nathan and me thickened with tension. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. But the silence was broken by the sound of the front door opening downstairs. We froze. My heart raced and I quickly pulled away from Nathan, panic flooding my chest. What had we just done? What was happening between us? Guilt washed over me but mingled with something else, desire. I couldn't ignore it. I felt trapped between the moment we had just shared and the reality that we were entangled in something we couldn't easily undo. Nathan didn't move at first, his eyes locked on mine, his expression unreadable. I could feel the heat between us, the lingering closeness that hadn't yet faded. "Ava," he whispered, his voice strained. Before he could say anything else, footsteps echoed up the stairs. I immediately recognized the voice. My heart sank. It was Victoria. I jumped off the bed, my breath quick and shallow. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced in all directions, but I couldn't think of a way out of this. Was I really going to face her after what had just happened? The door to Nathan's room creaked open and there she stood, Victoria, in the doorway. Surprise was written all over her face. Her eyes flickered between Nathan and me, confusion crossing her features as she took in the scene. "Ava, Nathan, what's going on here?" she asked, her voice uncertain, but there was something else, an intuition, maybe, that told her something wasn't right. I felt the blood drain from my face. Victoria's presence was like a bucket of cold water, and in that moment, everything felt wrong. There was no way to explain this, no way to justify what had just happened between Nathan and me. My throat tightened as I struggled to find the right words. I stammered, unsure of what to say. Nathan, now sitting on the bed, looked just as lost. His hand rubbed the back of his neck, clearly embarrassed, unsure how to explain what had just happened. Victoria's gaze moved from him to me, and there was an unspoken understanding between us. It was as if in that single moment everything shifted. She knew something had happened, something that shouldn't have, but her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of anger or disappointment, there was only a deep, unsettling sadness in her eyes. She stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. Her presence was commanding, and the room fell into a tense silence, like the calm before a storm. "Ava, you need to understand something," Victoria said gently, her voice softer than I had expected. "There's more to this than you realize, more than either of you understand." I looked at her, confusion flooding my mind. What did she mean? What more was there? The silence lingered even after Victoria left. Her words hung in the air, leaving a mark on both of us. Despite all the confusion, her calm understanding and offer of guidance gave me something unexpected. Hope. Victoria wasn't angry. She didn't cast us aside. Instead, she gave us a chance, a fragile and uncertain chance, but still there. I glanced at Nathan. His face was a mixture of guilt, confusion, and something else I couldn't identify. He was avoiding my gaze, his hands nervously rubbing together. I knew he felt the weight of what had happened, the way our worlds had collided unexpectedly. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized none of this had been anyone's plan. Things had unfolded beyond our control. What I knew for sure was that we couldn't ignore it. We couldn't pretend nothing had happened. Victoria was right about that. The feelings and confusion had to be addressed. and it had to be faced head-on. "Nathan," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly, "what do we do now?" Nathan looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "I don't know, Ava. I don't know what to feel, what to think. I don't know if I should be angry, ashamed, or if I'm even allowed to feel anything at all." His voice cracked, revealing the internal struggle he was facing. He was torn between the deep connection we had shared and his loyalty to Victoria, his wife. The situation couldn't be solved in one conversation. It wasn't that simple. I took a deep breath and walked toward him, closing the distance between us. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him. But I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do. I didn't know what was right anymore. "I don't think we'll figure everything out right now," I said softly, "but I think we need to talk. Be honest with each other. This is too complicated to ignore." Nathan nodded slowly, his expression serious but not angry. "Yeah, I know. I don't know where to start." I took his hand, the touch both comforting and charged with unspoken emotions. "We start by admitting what happened, what we felt, what we still feel. And then we figure out what comes next." He nodded again, his expression softening just a little. "It's not going to be easy, Ava, but I want to understand. I want to understand what's happening between us." I squeezed his hand, the contact both comforting and filled with unspoken emotions. "I don't have all the answers, Nathan. I don't know what happens next, but I'm not running from this. Not anymore." We sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thought, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. There was no clear way forward, no easy answers. The emotions, the confusion. It was all so overwhelming. But what Victoria had offered us was a lifeline, the space to face everything together, to confront the mess we had found ourselves in. I looked at Nathan again, and for the first time, I felt that no matter what happened next, we would face it with honesty. There was no perfect solution, no simple way to fix things, but there was hope. Hope for understanding and healing, and maybe even for something more. As I sat back, my thoughts racing with all the possibilities, I couldn't help but think of Victoria and what she had said. Her calmness and offer of understanding had opened a door I didn't even know existed. She hadn't rejected us. She hadn't condemned us. Instead, she had given us room to breathe, room to process what had happened. But what would happen next? How would things unfold? If we admitted the depth of what we still felt, could we move forward? Or would the weight of it all be too much? But those were questions for another time. Right now, it was just Nathan and me, sitting together in the silence of our shared uncertainty. We both knew nothing would ever be the same again. The only thing we could do was take the next step, whatever that might be, and somehow, together, we would figure it out. Welcome to Confession Stories, a space where raw, emotional tales are shared, filled with unexpected twists, intense feelings, and truths often kept hidden. These are the stories that challenge us, touch us, and sometimes even shift the way we view the world. Today, I want to share my personal story, one that continues to haunt me, a story that weighs heavily on my heart every time I speak of it. My name is Ava, and I am a stepmother nearing my 40th birthday. This is the story of how my life, once filled with hope and promises, spiraled into a nightmare I never saw coming. It all began innocently enough, like any other ordinary day in my life. I had been happily married to Thomas, a man I loved deeply. Thomas had 2 children from his previous marriage, Ethan, who was 20, and Jack, who was 18. I always understood that being a stepmother would come with its challenges, but I also believed that over time things would settle. The relationship between us was somewhat distant, which felt natural given I was the new woman in their lives. I knew it was important to give them space and time to adjust to the changes in their family dynamics. After all, Thomas and I had been together for a while, but finding the right balance wasn't always easy. That afternoon, Thomas was away on a business trip. It was just me and his 2 sons at home. I didn't think anything unusual was happening. In fact, there was a strange sense of calm in the air. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The only sounds filling the room were the clinking of knives as I chopped vegetables and the bubbling of the stew pot on the stove. The house was quiet, peaceful even, and I felt a strange comfort in the solitude. The silence was almost overwhelming, and I inhaled deeply, taking in the warm, rich aroma of the stew, hoping to make a nice meal for everyone when they returned. Then suddenly from upstairs I heard hurried footsteps. Before I could even turn around, Ethan burst into the kitchen. His face was pale, his eyes wide with panic. "Mom, come up here right now, Jack is about to die." His voice was frantic, filled with distress. Hearing those words made my blood run cold. I had no idea what was happening, but my heart began to race as I processed his words. "What do you mean? What's going on with Jack? Did he have an accident? Is he sick?" Questions flooded my mind and my breath quickened. I didn't have time to think. Without hesitation, I dropped everything, my knife, the cutting board, and ran after Ethan. We moved fast, almost in a blur. My legs carried me up the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. Ethan led the way, his face grim with worry. His footsteps were loud and hurried, and I could barely breathe through the fear and confusion clouding my thoughts. When we reached Jack's room, I had no idea what to expect, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. When the door swung open, there stood Jack, completely naked, his slender body illuminated by the soft light streaming through the window. He wasn't smiling in a happy or relieved way. His expression wasn't one of pain or fear either. Instead, there was something about his smile, something unsettling, almost sinister. I froze, unable to process what I was seeing. It was a sight that made my heart stop and my breath catch in my throat. I stood still, unable to make sense of it. "Jack, what are you doing?" I stammered, my voice trembling with confusion. I tried to look away, but it felt as though the image had been burned into my mind, impossible to forget. A part of me wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but my body didn't respond. Before I could gather my thoughts, Jack moved quickly. In a few strides, he crossed the room, grabbed my hand, and pulled me inside. His movements were forceful and deliberate. "Jack, stop!" I tried to pull away, but it was as though my body had been paralyzed, and his grip was too strong. The door clicked shut behind me, and I turned around in panic. Ethan stood in the doorway, blocking the exit. His eyes held a mixture of confusion and something darker, something that made me uneasy. It was as if he was torn between something he didn't fully understand and something far more troubling. "Ethan, open the door! What's going on? Why are you doing this?" I tried to keep my composure, to remain calm, but my voice quivered with fear. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could feel was the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. Just as I was about to take control of the situation, something else happened. A weight suddenly pressed down on my shoulders from behind. Ethan was close now, his breath warm against my ear. His hands gripped my shoulders gently, but there was a strength in them I couldn't escape from. A chill ran down my spine as he whispered, "Stepmom, we can't stand it when we see you with Thomas." His voice was low and hoarse, almost like a confession. It felt as though the world around me had stopped spinning, and I was frozen in place, unable to comprehend the meaning of his words. "What are you talking about? I don't understand," I stammered, trying to turn around to face him. But his grip tightened, holding me in place. His gaze never wavered from me. There was no hesitation in his eyes, no guilt, only a strange sense of determination. At that moment, Jack approached us, step by step, as if savoring every second, drawing out the tension in the room. He leaned in close, his face now only inches from mine. His eyes were cold and calculating, as though he was trying to read my very soul. "Mom," Jack whispered, his voice flat and emotionless. "Please indulge us." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt my throat constrict, my chest tightening. It couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "It can't be," I screamed in my head, but my body was frozen. The children I had once cared for, The children I had tried so hard to protect were now turning against me. I tried to push them away, to break free from their grip, but I was trapped. Jack stood in front of me, Ethan behind me, two walls closing in, leaving me with nowhere to run. Fear surged through my body, paralyzing me further. "Let me go!" I tried to scream, but my voice faltered, weak and trembling. It was as if my voice had abandoned me, leaving me powerless. Jack smiled, a small, sly smile that sent a shiver down my spine. "Mom, don't try to resist," he said, his voice soft, yet filled with unmistakable command. "We don't want to hurt you. We just want you to know how important you are to us." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, suffocating me. What was happening? Why was this happening? This wasn't what I had signed up for when I married Thomas. I never imagined things would reach this point. The minutes stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. I tried to hold on to whatever shred of sanity I had left, but it was slipping away. I tried to fight, to push them away, but my body no longer obeyed me. It was as though my mind and body were no longer in sync. Every touch, every movement from them seemed to take away a part of me. I felt myself losing control, my resistance growing weaker and weaker. I could feel the conflict inside me, the deep sense of guilt and humiliation warring with something else, something unfamiliar. It was like a storm inside me, a whirlwind I couldn't stop. I felt my body responding in ways I didn't want it to, in ways that terrified me. I knew what was happening was wrong. I knew it crossed every line, but I couldn't stop it, I couldn't escape. With every passing moment, I felt myself sinking deeper into the chaos, losing more of who I was. The principles I had once held so tightly to were slipping through my fingers like sand. I was no longer the person I used to be. I was no longer in control. I had become a pawn in their game, a plaything for their desires. The days that followed felt like a blur. Each morning I woke up next to Thomas. His peaceful face was a stark contrast to the turmoil that raged inside me. His warmth, his trust, everything I had cherished in our life together now felt like a cruel joke. I felt trapped in an endless cycle of guilt and fear, unable to break free. Each time I looked into his eyes, I saw only love and trust. Trust I knew. I was shattered, yet I couldn't bring myself to confess the truth. The silence between Thomas and me grew heavier each day. I couldn't look him in the eye without feeling the weight of my secret, which I carried like a stone in my chest. Heavy and suffocating. The smile that once came naturally now felt like a facade, masking the deep shame and fear that had taken root inside me. In the evenings, when Thomas was at work or out with friends, I found myself alone with Jack and Ethan. The house that had once been my refuge now felt like a prison. Every time I saw them, I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting for the next move. Their presence hung over me like a shadow, making each room feel suffocating. They had taken control of my life in ways I couldn't comprehend, and with each passing day, their hold on me grew stronger. At first, I tried to resist. I screamed, I pushed, I fought, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a pebble. The more I struggled, the more determined they became. It was as if my resistance only fueled their desire, making them bolder, more daring. The moments I once hoped would pass never did. Instead, they became habits. I, who had once prided myself on my strength, became weak, emotionally, mentally, and physically. My mind screamed at me to stop, to run, but my body no longer obeyed. The struggle was no longer just about what was happening. It was about the internal battle within myself. I felt like a prisoner in my own body, as though everything I had once believed in was being stripped away piece by piece. My thoughts had become my enemy. Every time I tried to make sense of what was happening, the truth seemed more distant, buried beneath layers of guilt and shame. There were moments when I looked into the mirror, searching for the woman I used to be, the woman I had hoped to become. But all I saw was a stranger, broken and lost. My reflection stared back at me with hollow eyes, distant and empty as if I had ceased to exist a long time ago. I no longer recognized myself, and I didn't know who to turn to. No one could understand the darkness I had fallen into. How could I explain to anyone what was happening? How could I tell Thomas, the man I loved, that his sons, his own flesh and blood, had destroyed me in ways that could never be undone? How could I admit that I had become their victim, their puppet, controlled by their every whim? I couldn't even tell myself what was happening, let alone anyone else. The shame was suffocating. Each time I thought about confessing, a voice inside me warned that it would be the end of everything. Thomas would never forgive me. The life we had built would be shattered, and I would be left with nothing but the wreckage of my own mistakes. The weight of this possibility paralyzed me, making it impossible to act. But there were moments when the guilt became unbearable. When I was alone in the quiet, I would find myself crying, my tears soaking into the pillow as I clutched it tightly to my chest. I wanted to scream, to release the pain and anger that had built up inside me, but I couldn't. The silence around me was deafening, and the walls of my mind seemed to close in tighter each day. So I carried on, trapped in my own silence and guilt. I began to wonder how much longer I could keep up the facade. How much longer could I pretend that everything was normal? How many more days would I spend lying next to Thomas, pretending all was well while my soul withered away inside? Each night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, waiting for sleep to come, only to be haunted by nightmares. Nightmares of what had happened, of the things I had allowed. Jack and Ethan seemed to follow me into my dreams, their eyes watching me, their voices echoing in my mind. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape them. They were inside me now, and there was no way to get them out. I tried to find comfort in my work, in distractions, anything that could take my mind off the nightmare I was living. But nothing worked. Nothing could distract me from the fact that I was living a lie. My life, my marriage, everything I had believed in had been built on deceit. I had allowed it to happen. I had allowed myself to be manipulated and used, and now there was no way out. I tried to reason with myself, to tell myself I had no choice, that I had been powerless. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had allowed it. I had been weak, and now I had to face the consequences. But how could I face Thomas? How could I confess to him the unimaginable? How could I tell him that I had betrayed him in the worst possible way? Yet every time I thought about telling him, a voice inside me told me it was too late. If I confessed, it would be the end of everything. No forgiveness, no redemption, only pain and destruction. The thought of losing him, losing everything, was too much to bear, so I stayed silent. But I couldn't keep the secret forever. The weight of it was crushing me, and I knew I couldn't live like this much longer. I had to make a choice. I had to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. But which truth was I facing? The truth of what I had allowed to happen, or the truth of what I had become? I didn't know. What I did know was that silence was not the answer. Silence would only destroy me. It would destroy everything I had ever cared about. If I didn't speak up, if I didn't regain control of my life, I would be lost forever. I wanted to ask for help, for advice. Should I confess everything to Thomas? Should I come clean and face the consequences, or should I stay silent and try to live with this burden, hoping that time would heal everything? Please, if you've read this far, don't judge me. I just want relief, some peace. I can't carry this burden alone anymore. I need to know that I'm not the only one who has ever felt this lost, broken, and trapped. From my story, I've learned that silence only leads to more pain, more secrets, more lies, and more suffering. I now know that I should have spoken up sooner, that I should have faced the truth from the start, no matter how hard it was. But it's never too late to make things right. I just have to find the strength to do it. I will, no matter the outcome. No matter the consequences, I will find a way to break free from this darkness. I will find a way to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my peace.